and change makers. So just to give you a little bit of introduction to the session, global health is a very diverse field. There is no limit to what you can achieve, but it's also important to find role models and mentors in the field that will help you understand what are the limitations, what are the ways and ventures that you can go on and explore your potential. So that is basically the purpose of today's session, to let you meet with global health change makers and the people in global health that have made very, I would say, diverse and interesting areas in their own domain of global health, and they have set different trends for people to follow. So without further ado, I will be introducing our speakers. So we have a great line of speakers for today, and it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the day, Dr. Kelly Mathal. So Dr. Kelly Mathal is an assistant professor of medicine at the Washington University in St. Louis. She is the past chair of the Junior Doctors Network of the World Medical Association, where she also serves as an advisor on infectious diseases, public health, and antimicrobial resistance. Dr. Mathal has completed her medical school training at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon, where she practiced medicine prior to moving to the United States to complete an internal medicine residency and subsequently a fellowship in infectious diseases. She has chaired the Global Health Workforce Network Youth Hub at WHO since 2019. And during her student years, she held various leadership positions, especially the Lebanese Medical Students International Committee and IFMSA for Vice President for Internal Affairs subsequently. At Washington University, she directs various programs for global health education for students and postgraduate trainees. And it is with no small amount of pleasure that I'm going to pass off the floor to Dr. Mathal to hear your presentation. I'm hopeful that it will be just a little bit shorter due to some circumstances that we just came to know a little bit before the session. So I look forward to your presentation, and I pass off the floor to you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I am, I think, well known in IFMSA to keep things short. So I will not change my habits today. I am just going to very briefly share a couple of slides with you. Now that you heard my bio, I think safe to say that you heard a little bit about my global health journey so far. So I will keep it short. But today, I definitely want to talk to you about incorporating academia and how important academia is for global health. So very quickly, reconciling academia and civil society in global health. And this is exactly my journey. As you very rightfully so mentioned, I started, like many of you here, in my National Medical Student Association, LAMSIC. If anybody from LAMSIC is here, they've heard me say that. I owe a lot to LAMSIC, and I love you and I'm very proud of you. I took a leadership position as the president of LAMSIC and later on moved to join the IFMSA, not really join, but rather join the executive board of the IFMSA, in which was a transition year for me prior to deciding what I wanted to do. Those of you who are part of student organizations today, this is a wonderful time to explore, to understand what you want, and to understand how to get there, I hope, by hearing stories from folks who were already there. So during my time in the IFMSA, this is where I got to understand what global health is. For some of us right here, especially those coming from low and middle income countries, global health is local health, is public health. So that concept of global health was just, I would say, odd. But once I got to interact with students from all over the world and understand what that really means and how the health of one affects the health of many across the globe, this is where my interest grew in global health. Through the IFMSA, I had done some work with the World Health Organization, and then later on, after I graduated from the IFMSA, and for those as old as me here today, 10 years ago now, we were preparing for the 60th anniversary of the IFMSA, which was my last General Assembly as an official of the team. So really wonderful memories that I will certainly carry, and friendships that I carry until today. So once you're part of a student organization, that's not forever. And you definitely, my personal advice to you is you don't want it to be forever. You want to look at what comes next and how can I continue being involved. And this is how I discovered, because of some IFMSA alumni, the existence of a newly formed network called the Junior Doctors Network of the World Medical Association. And I see the current chair of the JDN, Yasin, one of my close friends, who's here on today. So I joined the Junior Doctors Network, and I continued my path with the student early career professional organizations for several years afterwards. I moved to the United States to complete my residency in internal medicine, and then training in infectious diseases. And while all of this was happening, I would tell you that the WMA JDN was a big part of my life, of my professional experience, and I continued with the advocacy, with meeting new people, but also understood a whole different level of policy making that what I was used to. Afterwards, and I would say politics and policy, very important on the big scale of things. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to be involved in policy making, but it's important to understand it, because that will affect your work every single day. So I moved to Washington University in St. Louis, where I did my infectious diseases fellowship training. And I was very fortunate to have a wonderful boss who, from the moment I interviewed for my training, told me that he will support all my endeavors in global health, and he will support me to become a global health practitioner, but also to start and continue programs that we had at the university, and pretty much wherever I wanted to go afterwards. So this was a clear choice of where I wanted to train, and later on where I wanted to stay on for faculty. As all of this was happening, I also got involved because of the WMA JDN, where I became the chair for 2 years, with the founding of the Global Health Workforce Network, Youth Hub. And you may have heard about GWEN. I know you have heard from some of our colleagues in GWEN. It's a structure to very strongly advocate and produce evidence to support students and early career professionals in the health and care sector. Also, as part of my work at Washington University, when I worked with the World Medical Association, I became the chair of the Global AMR Research and Development Hub Expert Advisory Group. And I would say I was surprised when I was asked to be chair, because I am by far the youngest member of that expert group. My expertise, while I'm a very big fan and big advocate for health workforce, but as you can imagine, my expertise in my day-to-day work and my research is in infection prevention and antimicrobial resistance. Through being involved at Washington University in St. Louis, I also got to be on some national committees for antimicrobial resistance at the Infectious Disease Society of America. And that's also because of the support and the sponsoring of my boss that I mentioned before, that I got to be on that committee. Again, the youngest member of the committee. And then later on, the support of my other mentor, I joined the Society for Healthcare Epidemiology Policy and Governance structure. So a lot of different things that I decided to just stop at this, because otherwise the slide would have been very crowded. But what I wanted to tell you today is that academia and civil society both are very important components. And I hope that what I'm telling you today will inspire some of you to think of that path as the way to go into global health. I know very many people think that, oh, I need to work at the WHO, which is a wonderful place to work. I also spent more than half of my training at the WHO for infectious diseases, working on antimicrobial resistance. And that was a wonderful experience. But there are other options and opportunities out there. And your work can help not only global health, but can potentially help the WHO in their mandate to provide guidance and good policy. So academia is really the center for knowledge and expertise, whether we like it or not. This is where research is produced. This is where data is produced, and data is essential for anything in this life. I hope I'm preaching to the choir in this group of scientists. This is where the expertise comes for guidance production. So those of you who have served as part of expert groups at WHO, you know how this happens. They bring in experts from all over the world, including civil society and academia. And I have had the opportunity to serve in both roles at the WHO, and this is a wonderful experience, but this is where the experts come from. This is where we develop and pilot interventions that hopefully will be scaled up. It's a structure that easily receives, for the most part, easily receives and manages grants. And I would tell you that academia and universities look different from one country to the other. Opportunities are different, but I think the world has come to realize that this is where knowledge is produced. And even in some LMICs, and coming from one, we know that there are universities that have established those structures to pilot, to develop interventions very, very well. Through academia, you can interact with various UN organizations and international agencies. You get to do research, you get to teach. This is what I do, and I love it. And you provide clinical care. This was an aspect that was very important to me, because at the first and foremost, I am a doctor, and I do believe that the experience caring for patients at the front line, being during a pandemic or not, this is what gives me the credibility to sit at policy tables, especially at this early time in my career. And there are very many opportunities for career growth and to grow out of academia if this is what one wants. Professional organizations have been a big part of my life, my journey, and also my personal friendships. And I also see not only Yasin, but other names that I got to become really good friends. They're part of my life. And thankfully, we were able to keep up with each other, even during the pandemic. There's a wealth of expertise. There are like-minded individuals, and those professional organizations offer opportunities for advocacy at any level, including at the international level. So that's also something that I highly recommend. Since I promised I will be brief, this is all what I have to say today. And I'm definitely looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mathal. That was immensely inspiring, the way that you shared your whole journey in IFMSA, and then later on, I'm sure that opened up a lot of eyes here into what they can explore, especially our young delegates that have so many ideas after the last 5 days. Now, I'm immensely happy to share the next panelist of our session today, Ali Tayyab. He's the president of the International Association of Dental Students, the founder and current trustee of Iraqi Dental Students Association, IDSA. He's the first Iraqi young healthcare professional to be elected to lead Youth International Health Organization in the world, assigned as expert in the WHO Academic Quality Committee by WHO Healthcare Workforce Department. Dr. Tayyab started advocating for public health locally from 2015 in IFMSA as LPO before establishing the only dental student organization in Iraq in 2017 to lead independent projects in oral health using student-centered approach to design interactive curriculum for public health in dental schools. During his work in the international stage, he got the chance to lead the external relations of IADS last year to shape a new vision to reinvent art in dentistry as his main profession through innovation and global health advocacy. Dr. Tayyab, thank you so much for joining us today. I would still reiterate to keep the presentation short due to unfortunate circumstances, but I'm immensely, immensely delighted and looking forward to what you will share with us today. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you, and thank you for the invite and for the great presentation by Dr. Khalin, which is the mentor of all of us in the Global Health Workforce Network. Starting from the local work, there is no global health, especially in the low middle income countries, without really caring about the public health in your community. And that was the starting point when I was, there is a national association for dental students. So I start working with IFMSA as local public health officer. And this starts a lot of events in my life leading to this point to be with you here. So it is really how to be realistic on collecting data about your local community, which is will lead you to the point that you care about the links between your community and then your community with the regional community that you have in the world, and then you'll open your eyes on the global scale and how everything is connected, and this will give you this humbleness of every problem that you had, even if you are living in conflict area. There is something out there similar, and we need to work on it alone, not alone, together. We can do something together to really push this agenda forward. So going from the local side to the global is the first point that you need to focus on as healthcare professionals. And then you need to put what is your focus area. Firstly, you need to put, for example, the closest thing to my profession as a dentist, and it is something that I love, but I found that a lot of people are not experiencing the right skills in dentistry, which is they are not caring for the patients, but they are caring for the tooth itself, which is an object. And this link between oral health and global oral health is my focus area. Of course, all of you here will find your focus area on what you love. For example, planetary health, universal health coverage. There is a lot of things that you need to start from this moment as the professionals to focus on, because you can't solve all the problems in the world. You can't solve all the problems in health. So when you focus on point, then you had a new perspective and new professions and new data to collect. The third point is to build a successful and realistic execution of all the policy document that you work on. It is not enough to just write things. It is enough to build your networks and talk with people who will adopt these policies. We, as part from organizations, you will find that we are talking about policy documents, we are encouraging people and other organizations, and we deliver statements and all these stuff. But on the ground is the real execution of all these points. So when you work on the highest level of leadership in any NGO or any international NGO, you need to take care of all the people who are delivering this information on the ground, which is a very important point. And this will lead you on really have influence on people and really to get the advocacy right to all the stakeholders there, even the smallest. As you see, the smallest, there is no small stakeholder, but you see like there's a group of people that are far away from the international work, but you need to work with them efficiently to really do the policy and the action plans that you wrote, and we as professionals we wrote. The last point, and maybe it is a weird point, it's really important to understand on these days that we are living the business mind, how the business mind and the private sector work if we want to advocate, because this will give you a political power in health policy, in health system, on how to really focus on points and how to talk with the people who are really the decision makers of the government and the governments in the biggest NGOs in the world, and all these points is coming from politics. And maybe that's why I'm pushed to study international relations, not international health, because from my perspective, I need to understand the cultural and behavioral relations between the humans first, and then we are going to apply this to health. So all the points that
I think Dr. Tayyip froze.
Driving, it is very difficult to execute. Thank you very much, and sorry if it was a long speech, and I'm looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Ali Tayyip. I would like to have the honor to introduce you to our last speaker of today, Dr. Nabila Raja. She is a South African student currently in her 4th year of veterinary science, studying at the University of Pretoria's Faculty of Veterinary Science. She's serving as a member of the Executive Committee of the International Veterinary Students Association as the member organizations director. She has also served as a junior ambassador for the World Animal Health Organization for her country, as a member of the IVSA Standing Committee on One Health, as well as the vice president of the IVSA South Africa. Prior to this, Nabila has served on around 7 other students' clubs and societies on campus, which include her campus wildlife committee, VETSCO, the faculty's residence house committee, as well as her faculty house committee, as community engagement officer, and then as chairperson. Her passion lies in making a real and tangible difference and motivating others to get involved to do the same. Welcome, Nabila. You two have 10 minutes to share your experience with us.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Again, it's a huge honor and a very big privilege for me to be here today. I do have a presentation. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to rush through it because of the time limitation, but please, I'm happy to share this with anybody. So there are helpful links there as well, if anybody needs it. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see the PowerPoint that I have up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you guys for being here. If there is any like comments or anything, I'm happy to also, like, I love interacting with people. So if there's something that you want to put in the comments or ask me, like, please put it out there. And sorry for my rush, but I just want to make sure I get through everything. So I'm here from the IVSA. I'm just a student. And if there's any disagreement in terms of how I feel or what my opinions are, that's, I guess, also the whole point of having a platform like this, is where professionals can come together, or future professionals, and lock horns or butt heads or whatever you want to say and discuss stuff. So here I am at our YouthPreWHA. Thank you again to the IFMSA for hosting me today. And we're talking about global health professionals and change makers. Big deal, big topic, lots of pressure, very scary, but also very exciting. So who am I? Why am I here? Yes, I love using memes. I know it's not the most professional thing, but I feel like it helps to break the ice, especially when you don't know people, especially with this pandemic, when you can't meet people face to face. It's always good to have a bit of laughter here and there. So we've gone through my bio. I'm not going to take more time on that. But what I want to say is that my biggest goal right now as a future healthcare professional is to make some kind of difference, whether it is to one person or 10 people, where I know that something has happened. So I might feel differently to other healthcare professionals about something, but I'm just here to give my opinion. In terms of the IVSA, as mentioned in my bio, I belong to the executive committee, or the EXCO as we call it. And you can see my name there, very small with the South African flag. I am the only sub-Saharan representative on the EXCO, along with Mehdi, who is the only MENA representative. So there are 2 of us from the African continent on the EXCO. And my job is basically for all our MOs, or member organizations all over the world, to sort out every and any issue that they have. And in order to do that, I have our beautiful family, the MOD team, where I have 3 secretaries and I have 6 regional representatives, and each regional representative is equipped with a beautiful team. And I love them a lot. Big shout out to them, even though they're not here. And that is a picture of me with a lamb. Every year we have lambing season, and then it's a big photo opportunity for everybody on campus. Okay, so again, I just touched on my roles and responsibilities. I'm just here to in the IBSA to fix any issues that we have from region to region. And I like that the idea of regional issues was brought up very, very likely previously, because all regions have different ways of understanding and implementing. And we have to understand that as global healthcare professionals. What I've also taken the time to get involved in over and beyond my duties is discovering the idea of privilege and professional privilege. So what I might be talking about today might sound a little bit unicorn and rainbows-ish or something, not super technical, but that's where I come from. And my ability to connect with the member is what I rely on very heavily in terms of making the difference that I wanted to make. So we've explored in the veterinary profession the idea of privilege, general privilege, racial privilege, any socioeconomic privilege, professional privilege is something that I think I might bring up today as well. And we've basically tried to bridge the gap between our regions in terms of communication and understanding, because different regions and countries within those regions prioritize different problems within your profession, and also happen to look at different professions differently. For example, in South Africa, we're highly respected. If you go to Morocco, veterinarians are not really at the top of the food chain there. And that makes a big difference in terms of when people feel they can rely on us as healthcare professionals and how much they believe in the system. Something else I quickly want to point out, what I've seen as the MOD in the IBSA, as students, we always want to know, what can we do to be change makers? Rely on the power of media. It is useful, even though it is seen as like trendy or something with millennials and Gen Zs and stuff like that. It works, and it can help to get your message out there in terms of education and awareness. Second thing, the power of community. I like that our first speaker mentioned, you know, the different platforms you can have globally, but please never, ever underestimate your personal platform, your individual capacity to make a difference, and the power of your neighborhood, the power of your community. It can do wonders. And it also plays a big role in terms of capacity building and sustainability in terms of changes you want to make in the long term. Okay. Then I just wanted to share personal milestones with you so that you have an idea of what I've been trying to do. This is a beautiful picture of us doing an outreach in a township in South Africa, our once a year campaign, which my heart is like with this campaign. I've taken the time to try to figure out how we can uplift and empower our members. So you guys in the IFMSA, I don't want to get into politics of how your association works, but due to, I think, how things have always been established, or the way that things are right now, there is always, and it's the challenge that we face in terms of establishing a balance where every member gets equal opportunity. And I think this is something very important that we as leaders in our fields and having higher positions in our organizations need to work on, how each member can gain equal amounts, if not the most optimal amount, out of the association that we join. Okay, I can talk about this later if anybody wants me to talk about it. It's not too important right now. Okay, so global health professionals and change makers. My journey towards One Health, I became interested in One Health because I was part of the Onderstepoort Paraveterinary and Veterinary Student Committee. I served as the community engagement officer, and we used to conduct outreaches with the medical students on campus and eventually involve the dentistry students as well. And for me, the biggest thing was to see that one change that you made in one person's life, where every single year they revisit your outreach and say, there's nothing wrong with my dog, but I wanted to show you that he's doing well. And that is a huge deal, especially in a community where education is not doing so great and they don't trust the healthcare system. So I think that belief in the everyday person to take it upon themselves to make a bigger difference is what really made a difference to me here. In terms of One Health, I think all of us need to realize as healthcare professionals that, or future healthcare professionals, we forget sometimes about the idea of civic duty and social responsibility, because we sometimes focus too much on what our personal goals or aspirations are, and never forget the noble cause of becoming a healthcare professional is that you're here for something bigger than just you. I will come back to this later in the discussion. Rush again. And then this as well, I will discuss later. I'm so sorry for rushing through my slides. Vet students are not like super technical, I think, as human medical students are. Okay, this is the one thing I really, really wanted to talk about in terms of global healthcare professionals and change makers. Guys, I can say, and I don't know what my fellow speakers will say on this, we might have differing opinions. You don't need the biggest title in the world to make a difference and to be a change maker. The fact that you are here right now, you have the potential and are possibly already making some kind of change. We must never underestimate the power of the average person, of the little person. And I think when we say little person, it's almost insulting, because little can be quite big. So please remember that if you want to be involved in terms of global healthcare profession or change making, whatever it is, use the platforms that are there 100%. But please never forget, if you don't have those platforms, if you never get the best job that you wanted, there are platforms and there are alternatives everywhere you look. You just have to have the mind, be open-minded enough to want to create those opportunities for yourself. And okay, the other thing that I also wanted to say and echo what the second speaker said was the idea about policy statements and position statements and all these things. I think coming from sub-Saharan, we don't really rely too much like our European counterparts or American counterparts on the policies and stuff like that. But what I can tell you, they do work, but I think they work hand in hand as well with reaching on the ground, doing on the ground work, and really reaching out into the communities that you have decided to work on. Yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to say there. Very, very important. I just wanted to quickly, I'm gonna like swing past these slides, and I will come back to it later in the discussion. Hamid was invited me via IFMSA to be part of a capacity building program or session where we discussed capacity building. Second speaker and first speaker, both, thank you so much, both mentioned One Health, public health. One Health and public health, don't forget about capacity building. And all of these basically sort of serve as guiding stars for how you should move forward in terms of what you want to do in terms of making a change. So I think before you even like, okay, I want to go out, I want to do this, these are nice little like checkpoints to make sure that you're doing this in the best way possible. They're all very, very useful links that I found here to slideshows that talk about capacity building, One Health, public health. If ever you need them, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I never know who's coming on what level of understanding. So this presentation is free for anybody. Please use it. Links are there for you. And basically, last is that, guys, please remember, use what platforms you have in terms of change makers. Don't forget that you yourself, at whatever level you are, first year, pre-med, med, I don't know how the medical system works. You guys have potential at any level to make any change, as long as you have that drive in you and you understand that at any level in your academic career you have, or professional career, you have that potential. With One Health, with public health, it's not just a vet med thing. It's not a vet med pharmacy dentistry thing. One Health is much deeper than we think it is. And I think we're still developing the science, and we should be part of those pioneers who develop the science further. So we cannot talk about true One Health and public health without talking about capacity building and sustainability. And us as students, lastly, we always want to do the most. We want to sign up for every single outreach. We want to do everything we possibly can. But if nothing is sustainable, if we're not thinking about firstly promoting education and awareness, then I think we need to re-look at our way forward in terms of attaining our objectives. Lastly, please do not forget about social responsibility and civic duty. It is something that grates my kidneys sometimes when people like future healthcare professionals forget about the fact that we are here for a bigger purpose than ourselves. And if you need to contact me for anything, I am here, and I'm very sorry for speeding through my presentation.
Thank you so much, Nabila, for your presentation. We will now be taking questions for the audience. So if you have a question, please write it in the chat or raise your hand so that we can take it for you. Iris?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of the speakers. It was really inspiring to hear from all of you and your different life stories and how you've done all these inspiring things. For me, it was very inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing that. I actually had a question for Kalin. I was wondering, Kalin, if you could talk a little bit about your experience with the WHA and what you would give as an advice to all of us that are going into the WHA next week, of course, in this new virtual setting, but still very much going there to make a change. Do you have any words for us?
Yeah, no, thank you, Iris, for the question. And yes, I did start my time at the WHA when I was an IFMSA member, and Facebook just reminded me of that. I think the virtual platform makes things a bit more challenging. But what I do want to tell you is, now that you're going to know how old I am, but I think I've reflected on that already. But throughout the years where I've been going to the WHA, I have seen IFMSA and in general, also with IFMSA come other young healthcare students in a big effort to be present, not only to be present, but to contribute to various topics, to organize side events. And I think if you ask any member state delegate who's been to the WHA for some time now, they all know who IFMSA is. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to bring the voice of young people to the forefront. I think the agenda of youth involvement and meaningful youth involvement as well has been brought up mainly to begin with by IFMSA or people who have been somehow connected to IFMSA and came in other respects. And I think that this is just to tell you that you have a tremendous amount of power, sometimes even a much bigger power than organizations that are coming to Geneva physically or virtually for years with a much bigger budget, etc. You are there, people know who you are, and you are bringing topics that a lot of people are not even daring to take positions on. So I definitely want to encourage you to continue being present, listening, and picking and choosing the topics that you think are of crucial importance. The reason I say that is, if as young people, you want to speak on every single topic, at some point, you're going to become redundant. And the member states who are there for hours, and even though they listen to each other repeating things for hours, they don't like to listen to civil society at the end repeating things or being there when they don't have anything to say. My only piece of advice is be mindful about where you want to contribute and where you think my contribution is not as important. But I do want to tell you that you have a presence, you have a voice, and please continue using it. You have a voice, as I mentioned, that is much stronger than many other organizations. And I think that that is incredibly powerful for you. I'm sorry, for you, but also for the organization in general. So I am pretty sure that Iris and the team have prepared a great program of interventions and involvement and contributions to the WHA, and I am certainly looking forward to see what IFMSA will be doing this year again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mathal, for those kind words and answering that question so wonderfully. We are going to take our next question. I see, Concertina, you have raised your hand. You can open your mic and introduce yourself.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for the presentations. I was really inspired by the different pathways. I am Constantina. I am a fifth-year medical student from Greece. And my question is also for Dr. Mathal. You mentioned a lot in the presentation, like the importance of academia and clinical experience, but of course, like a pathway in global health and a career that requires like engagement in different environments and studies in different environments. So do you believe you can keep a balance in both and be successful in both? And if yes, like how we can do this, if you have like specific tips or piece of advice?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the question. And I would say that it really depends eventually on the environment that you are going to work in. Not every academic environment, not every academic institution around the world is the same. I was very fortunate to come to a place that is thousands of kilometers away from my home country, but that is allowing me to do what we think of as traditional academic work, which is research, education, and clinical care, and marry that with global health. So I do want to tell you that you want to be careful knowing what you are getting into. And as you get, I say older, but this is not in a you get more experience in your career and you've spent years in a specific academic setting, you get to start choosing what you want to do. And this is how you can marry both. I think a career in global health can look very, very different. So you heard only from me coming from academia and civil society, but I'm sure that over the course of pre-WHA, you also saw people, for example, who work full-time for the WHO. And I know that I saw some names before. I don't know if they're still here, but they're wonderful people with wonderful careers. So this is definitely one place to think about if this is what you only want to do. My perspective about global health is I want to produce the evidence, but I also want to take the evidence, I mean, very rightfully so mentioned by our speakers, to the local level. So this is what I do for my own research. I work on dissemination and implementation of evidence in certain low and middle income countries for antimicrobial resistance. And through that work, I also work in global health. So the other option, if you are in a country where you have more traditional academic institutions that you may not give you time to do that, marrying it with professional organizations or civil society organizations on the side and keeping that track to go into global health is another option. But I definitely want to reiterate for those of you who are wondering, do I want to fully go into public health? Do I want to fully go into global health? Do I still want to be a doctor, pharmacist, nurse, etc.? Clinical experience is extremely crucial. It truly gives you credibility, and not only credibility, but also it allows you to tell in the first half an hour after reading a guidance if it will work or if it won't, because this is something you live every single day with patients and people. So I think that that's something that is not to be discounted at all. And the other thing I would tell you is whenever you take care of a patient and they get better, it's a very rewarding experience, and it justifies very easily why you spent those countless nights and days and hours studying for your exam. So that's, I think I will leave it at that. And certainly if I didn't fully answer the question, I'm more than happy to answer via email.
Thank you so
Thank you very much.
Then we'll have a last question. Fatima, could you introduce yourself and then ask your question?
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Fatima Al-Basri. I'm a medical student from Sudan. My question is regarding the engagement of youth in youth-based organization or healthcare organizations, because sometimes the pathway in IFMSA, for example, IFSA or any kind of organization is not so sure because of many factors. For example, there may be high level of competition. There may be, for example, you can see burnout waves, which can hit the students badly. And some students are not so interested in working in such environment. However, I have met many colleagues who are really want to be global health leaders, but they couldn't be engaged in IFMSA or in any kind of youth organization in effective way. So what is your advice for those students and how they can grow professionally and be global health leaders by doing other methods or engaging in any kind of activities? Thank you.
Maybe Ali or Nabila, you can answer, because this is the last round and we also want to hear from your experience. I hear someone, but I'm not sure who.
Dr. Thiab, your connection is lagging.
Someone, but not sure who. Dr. Thiab, your connection is lagging.
It's okay now? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Starting from Nabila points, she mentioned that it is not very important to be to have a position or to work on a very high level position in organizations to really give the impact. Going to the roots of the problems, because this is something that have been repeatedly happened with youth when we get in discussions, especially when you come from local side, you will find people who are really interested, but they don't know the path path. They don't know how to start the point. And maybe this is something psychological to start thinking about it, but it is not
We
about
cannot hear you so well. We cannot hear you so well. I'm sorry.
Problem of nation that there's a lot of paths in global health. There's a lot of
Maybe Nabila, if you would shortly want to answer the question, and then we'll pass it back to Ali, so that just to be sure that the connection is right and that we can understand your answer.
Thank you, Juliette. Fatma, assalamu alaikum. That was a brilliant question. Thank you for asking it. I find that in our MENA region and in our Asia region specifically, but it happens everywhere, there's always politics. We're at the student level and outside, there's always politics in terms of competition. People can't get in. They simply don't have the resources to even be part of the IFMSA or IVSA. So what can they do? And this is where somebody like our previous dean at our faculty said, use your 5-kilometer radius rule. You want to be a healthcare professional. You want to make a difference. Charity starts at home. So you take wherever you are or wherever you're based and say, in a 5-kilometer radius, what difference can I make? I promise you, if you work long-term, sustainably, capacity building, you're going to make the waves you need to make. And the waves it sounds really like idealistic daydreaming over here, but it's the truth. The more waves you make, the more you solidify whatever work you're doing, you will make the impact you want to make. Before I can think about going to Australia, for example, and making a difference in Australia, let me make the change in my country where my people need me. So yeah, I hope I managed to answer your question.
Thank you so much. Ali, if you want to have another try.
It's clear now.
Okay, yes, I can hear you very well.
Great. So we had an issue. There's a lot of youth and people, especially in the young age, they are interested to do something, but they found that global health, what is global health really means, because they found just one term to work on. And I think what we need to do as organizations, as international organizations, is give them the right terms, to the right details about what is really the parts inside global health that they need to work on. And this is something that IFMSA have been doing perfectly now, mentioning that there's projects related to education and or health and global health, and there's planetary health, there's a lot of subjects, and micro-resistance as well. So if someone needs to have a focus point, they need to work on it inside of the global health spectrum. This is one point. The other point is coming from the youth. A lot of young people think in the way when the election arrives on the national side or on the international side, they think 1 month prior to the election to get this position. If you want to really change, it is not about how to prepare yourself for the election. It is about how to really scale up your work on the whole year to reach this position and going to deliver something very useful for your colleagues. Because you will find a lot of people have impact and they don't have really fancy positions, for example. And this is something that we need to really encourage people to scale up their work on the whole year to reach the positions in the international organization, because this is a very important point. It is not about how to lead, just I'm the leader of this organization, and that's it for your colleagues in global health as global health professionals.
Okay, thank you so much. Some parts were difficult to hear, but I think the main message went through also when I look at Fatima. We're going to close the session now. I would like to thank each of you today, Kelly, Nabila, Ali, And also we have a fourth speaker that couldn't be here today due to circumstances, but who would have liked to be with us. Yes, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the session and that you were inspired by our three speakers here today.
Thank you. Have a nice day, and everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, confirming that the live stream is on.
I think it's working. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so welcome everyone, participants, and also those who join us through the live stream. We will start this session on youth delegate programs, which is a very concrete way of influencing the WHA agenda and achieving maybe meaningful youth participation. And we have experienced guests with us who will tell us more about their journey and challenges as young people in global health. So I will go ahead and introduce each of them to you. And I also have a question after the introduction for each of the speakers. And I wanted to ask you about your observation on what it means to be a young person in the world of global health. So without further ado, I will introduce you to our first speaker, which is Theodor Blidaru. He's a radiology resident and a graduate of Carol Davila University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Bucharest, and currently is serving as vice president of the Romanian Association of Resident Doctors. He has formerly been serving as the United Nations Youth Delegate for Romania and the first Romanian youth delegate to the World Health Assembly. Prior to becoming a youth delegate, he has been involved in the International Federations of Medical Students Associations, both as a representative of healthcare students from Romania and as a liaison officer, working in the arena of external and student representation. Theodor, welcome. So I'm asking the first question to you first. What are your observations of what it means to be a young person in the world of global health?
Thank you, Juliette, for the introduction. Thank you, Iris, and the team for the invitation. I'll respond to the question and also share a bit of my experience. I'll be as brief as possible, and also really happy to take other questions. What does it mean to be a young person in global health and to be a representative of young people? I think it's a necessity. I think it's, I would say, we are a bit privileged to be here, and we have a duty for the students and for the young people in our settings, in our communities, to be their voices. So in short, it means to be a voice, and we have to be a voice for our generation, because usually our generation, and I'm not exaggerating, but we are the ones that are usually coming with the new ideas and with the freshness in global health. So we are that freshness in global health, and we should keep it that way. As for the, will I get more questions now, or should I tell my part and then get more questions? Are there any more questions at this point, or should
sorry, Theodor, I was still muted. This is just an introductory questions. After this, I'll ask questions to each of the panelists, and we will also have questions from the audience. So
brilliant.
Thank you for your first response to the introductory question.
Thanks.
Then we will go to our next panelist, which is Nicola Tofomeyer. She's a technical officer on cardiovascular health in the Department of Non-Communicable Diseases at the WHO in Geneva. She holds an MPH from Simon Fraser's University in Canada and a Master of Science in International Development and Humanitarian Emergencies from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She held various positions in global health, including the WHO Office to the UN in New York City, Canada's International Development Research Center, Canada, the Canadian Institution for Health Information, the Department of Global Health at Queen's University, and as a former board member of the Canadian Coalition for Global Health Research. In 2017, she was selected by Canadian youth organizations and the federal government to serve as Canada's youth delegate to the 70th WHA in Geneva and the 27th Pan-American Sanitary Conference in Washington, D.C. Nicola, welcome to you as well. And I will ask the same question to you. So what is your observation on what it means to be a young person in the world of global health?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm joining you from Canada, so still morning for me. But yeah, first, thanks for the invitation to join you guys today at your pre-WHA event, and kudos to the organizers for their outstanding preparations. So that's a difficult question, you know, what it means to be a young person in global health. And the first thing that came to mind was there's a lot of pressure. You know, we're the next generation, but we're also the leaders of today. And depending how we define youth, it can be up to 30 or so. There's no standard definition really. And we collectively represent over half of the world's population, and that's a huge voice. And so being a young person in global health, having the responsibility to make sure that we're inclusive and representing all those voices is a lot of pressure. So I just want to start by saying that, and I look forward to the other questions.
Thank you so much. We will go to our next speaker, which is Iris Blom, who most of you will know. She is a final year medical student with honors at the University of Amsterdam with a master's degree in global affairs as a Schwarzman Scholar from Tsinghua University in China. Currently, she represents 1.3 million students worldwide to the WHO as the liaison officer to the WHO at the International Federation of the Medical Students Associations. In her work, Iris advocates for meaningful youth engagements and health for all. She's particularly interested in the relationship between climate change and health. Iris has led delegations to multiple WHO high-level meetings and attended the first ever UN Youth Climate Summit and the UNFCCC's Conference of Parties to Advocate for Health. Welcome, Iris. I will ask the same question to you. What is your observation of what it means to be a young person in the world of global health?
Thank you so much, Juliette. And I'm super happy to be speaking on this panel with these amazing co-panelists that I've met in different stages in my life. And I'm very happy to be speaking with them about this very important topic today. So thank you so much for joining us. With regards to your question, I totally resonate with what has been said before, both with regards to the importance of the voice of youth, but also it being a lot of pressure. And what I would like to add to that as another perspective is that I also find it a very exciting, but also very difficult challenge to represent the voice of youth in a global health area. You'll meet many different opportunities, and especially in the virtual setting, a lot has changed and a lot of opportunities have opened up. But every step that you take, you have to meta think. You have to think about why am I here? Why am I being invited here? What is my voice going to do in this space? And what is my role in that space? Because it's very important as young people that we do not engage in tokenism, that we are engaged in a meaningful manner. So this meta thinking is something that I find very challenging, but in an exciting way for sure, but also in a difficult way. And because we are here to represent the voice of youth, but definitely meaningfully whenever we can. So that would be my first answer.
Thank you for your insights, Iris. Then we'll go to the last panelist with Dia Saminarsi. She's an Indonesian psychologist and a public health advocate, as well as a senior advisor on gender and youth to the WHO's DG. She served in the government of Indonesia as a special advisor to the health minister in the area of partnership and sustainable development goals from 2014 to 2018. She deflected from her career from corporate restructuring specialist to the public sector reformist when she joined the office of President's Special Envoy for MDGs in 2010. She envisions the breadth of ways in which behavioral science reshaping approaches to public policy. Her psychologist eyes not only benefited her during the negotiation process of the Open Working Group on the Sustainable Development Goals and intergovernment negotiation of the SDGs, but also guided her in several strategic initiatives she designed. As the assistant for program planning and community strategy, DHA received praise for major breakthroughs, embracing the principles of open government and youth-led development. So DHA, welcome to you too. And I will ask this question to you as well. So what does it mean for you to be a young person in the world for global health?
Okay, thank you for the question, and thank you for having me back in the pre-WHA. This is, I think, the 4th WHA where I joined from the WHO side and have been following the pre-WHA and IFMSA pre-WHA since before, when I was with the government of Indonesia. I think it needs to be stated that I'm perhaps not that young as all of you who are participating in this pre-WHA. However, I went into my career in public service and as a civil servant, and then becomes an international civil servant at a younger age than my peers. So when I joined the government of Indonesia in the President's Office for the Millennium Development Goals, I think I was the youngest among my peers. And because it's MDGs, then automatically the outlook for that job is global health. I had my first taste much later of global health, much later than all of you were when you started at that forum. And then I went on to my involvement with the SDGs, and as a negotiator for the government of Indonesia for the SDGs, and then with the Minister of Health, and then on to WHO as a global health practitioner. Also, I'm the youngest WHO director. That's according to the information I received from my boss, Dr. Tedros. But still, I think being young or being the youngest has a certain advantages, but also it has its drawbacks. I think what I can draw from my experience is that you become aware of your position and how to utilize that position. So the younger or the older age gap, because between me and you, we have quite substantial age gap. But also between me and my peers of other directors in WHO, we have, I think, quite significant age gap. And then you have to utilize that to your advantage in a good way, of course. And I think one of the advantages of being young or younger than the rest of the pack is you are expected to have innovation. And I think also people will be okay with your extra strength, your extra hard-headedness, your extra energy and perseverance. And also people expect us to become the idealists that we are. I think that is, those are key advantage points where I have, now it's my 12th year on the public service side, from the government as well as from multilateral agency as WHO. And I think we need, speaking from WHO side and also from, I think, a lot of other governments, I think we need that breath of fresh air, the breakthrough, the innovations, the voice, where we would like younger people to be able to engage meaningfully in all of the processes of health policy making and also other policy and also to the implementation. So I think we have the breadth of experience, I think, between us to see things through from design on to implementation. And I think that is one of the key reason why I stayed on as a practitioner of public health in a global health fora, and then be able to brush off any of the difficulties I experienced as the person younger than the rest of the group, because of that vision and of the value that I believe we all share and we hold together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dia. I will stop sharing my screen so that we can continue our dialogue. Yes, and I also want to encourage the participants to ask their questions. I will start with some general questions, but please add on to them. And my first question is to Theodor and to Nicola. If you could tell us a bit of background on how your youth delegate programs were established and where you are now. Yeah, you can start, Theodor.
Thanks for the question. I'm also very happy to join the other panelists and to see some of you again. So about the program in Romania. In my experience, I was in two kinds of delegate programs. First of all, is the WHO delegate program, which you are probably familiar with now with the toolkit from IFMSA, which is amazing. Kudos guys for finally doing it. It's been in doing for like a few years, and I would definitely know a lot about it. And also the UN Youth Delegate Program, which it may be a reality in your countries already. If not, it's another thing you guys can work on. So I'll take them one by one. First of all, how we started with the UN, with the WHO Youth Delegate in Romania. First of all, I joined IFMSA. As most of my previous speakers, also in the previous session, I joined locally, nationally, then internationally in IFMSA. I saw youth can have a voice. I was not really used to youth being powerful in various, public health, global health fora, but it seems we have a role there. So I saw that we can do a lot of stuff. So I was like, okay, why not try to expand the influence we are having as youth, not only from an NGO environment, which is, it's fast, it's fresh, we can do whatever we want in the NGOs, but we are not really insiders. We try to force the change, but we cannot really generate it from within because we are not within the member states, our governments. So I was like, okay, we need a tool to try to generate change faster from within. And I looked around and I saw that there are already countries sending youth delegates to WHO. There is already a very long-standing, it's already for 18 years now, UN Youth Delegate Program. And I was like, why not? Why should we not do it in Romania as well? So we started easily. We just went to the government, to the Ministry of Health, and guess what? We got refused and rejected. And we were sent back home. And we thought, okay, we lost. We should go back home and try to work from IFMSA, and that's all. Because we went there unprepared and without proper research, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the first thing you should do in the toolkit, in the IFMSA toolkit. I remember also encouraging the team to put it there because you need the research. The government has important stuff to do. If you go with your program, just demanding some young people to be involved in WHO and in the delegations, no one will give it to you. Do your research well, do your methodology well, propose a timeline, a pilot, and so on, and things will happen. So what we did next, we did research. We showed them that other countries are doing it. And we proposed them to be in this select group of countries. There were only 10 countries 2 years ago, or less than 10 countries doing youth delegate program to WHA. So Romania was quite interested in being in this, very few first countries to send young people there, and they liked it. Also, we found a channel, an ambassador, a vector, because sometimes maybe we are not credible enough in the eyes of the Ministry of Health or Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But we found a professor from our university that was also working in WHO, and he helped us a lot, opening doors in the ministry. So that's one very important advice I'm giving you. Find that ambassador, the vector to start setting your program. And we managed in 2019 to send a pilot in the person of myself as the first WHO youth delegate of Romania. Then the program got a bit stopped because of the pandemic. Unfortunately, we didn't send any young people to the online ones, but we got the methodology approved. And once the WHA delegations start again, being physical and going to Geneva, we'll have 2 people, not one, selected with transparent elections. To join also the delegation. So finally, this year we got the methodology approved. That's an important step. We didn't have a methodology. I was, handpicked, and I agree that's not fair. But I was the president of the NGA of the National NGO at that point, the FASMRE at that point. So in the future, I think it's important to have transparent elections with a methodology so everyone knows about it, involving dental students, involving pharmacy students and so on. So have it as public as possible, and also with a clear term. Do preparation before, join the meeting, do follow-up, because we didn't have that. I did it voluntarily, but we didn't have that as a compulsory thing. So that's about the program for WHO. In Romania's case, it was useful to have a UN program running for 15 years. After I went to WHA, I applied to be the UN Youth Delegate, and I got it. And I was UN Youth Delegate for 1 year. I went to the UN General Assembly as Romania's Youth Delegate. That's kind of a long-standing program with very exact rules. We meet with the Secretary General of the UN, and I encourage you to look in your country and see if you have one. Currently, there are way more countries sending delegates to UN, about 40 countries, than to WHO, I think 10, 15 countries. And if you don't have a UN Youth Delegate program, check the UN website. You'll have a toolkit and a guide there, and you can also start working on that. I encourage you starting working on both. If you work on one, gather other student organizations from other areas like general federations and work on both. Sorry if I were too long.
No. Thank you so much for your elaborate answer. Nicola, can you tell us a bit about how that went in Canada?
Yes, absolutely. So Canada's Youth Delegate program was one of the first and more mature than others at this time. We started in 2016. So this year we're sending our 6th Youth Delegate, Surabi, who's on the call today. And it was set up with a tremendous amount of advocacy. And that was by Yasin, who was also on the call, and I think he still is, advocating to the Canadian delegation at the World Health Assembly that it's so important to include the voice of youth as part of the delegation. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on what Canada's Youth Delegate program entails, and then I'll get into some details of my experience. So we have a fairly rigorous selection process. It's made up of a selection committee that comprises of youth organizations and representatives. And then we assess each of the candidates' profiles, and then we put together a short list for the Government of Canada to make the final selection based on our recommendations. And in the last 6 years, we've had youth delegates that have ranged from their early 20s up till about 30. And we've represented a wide range of disciplines. So we've had some who are focused in public health, others in medicine, some in cultural anthropology, others on health quality improvement and research. So represented a lot of different disciplines. And as you guys know, it's a 1-year term, and the Canadian program includes normally participation with the WHO Executive Board meetings, as well as the WHA, of course, and then the PAHO regional meeting. And it's a volunteer position through the government. And in pre-COVID times, we normally send the youth delegate, and all expenses are covered for, to Geneva and Washington to participate in the meetings. But of course, with it being done virtually, that's changed the last 2 years. And the Canadian program has really strong support from the government officials at the Public Health Agency of Canada. Throughout the year, they're very supportive and phenomenal mentors. So we've been really lucky. So I'm going to share a little bit of my experience as a youth delegate, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So I was selected in the fall. I had the opportunity to engage in preparations ahead of the executive board meetings. And then I supported in planning for the WHA. And then again, the Pan American Sanitary Conference that was held in Washington in September. So I was the 2nd youth delegate. So it was a newer program in 2017 when I started. And I just want to break the role into 3 different phases. So the first one being the planning. So that's a lot of engagement with the government officials in Canada, participating in their external stakeholder consultations based on the provisional agenda of what's going to be discussed at WHA. And then in my year, I was really determined to strengthen the level of engagement among students and young professionals across Canada and across disciplines, to really make sure that my voice was collective of other youth. So I established a consultative process, and that used a series of online meetings, some online surveys, and then templates that were tailored to agenda items to solicit views and to gather all of brilliant ideas that youth have, and then to synthesize those outputs so that they could be incorporated into Canada's positions and perspectives at the WHA and the PAHO regional meetings. And then the second phase, I would say, is the participation when you're actually at the meeting. So you're engaging with the Canadian delegation in various committee meetings, supporting the preparations of their statements, participating in bilateral meetings, and really getting to know how WHA works. So some of the highlights that I just want to share as part of the Canadian program, normally we have a youth delegate who delivers an intervention and position statement on an agenda item. We also try to have a co-facilitation of a meeting between our Minister of Health and the youth delegate on global health issues. And that includes participation of other youth. And that's normally, that normally takes place in Geneva in line with WHA. And then one of the best things about the participation at the meeting is meeting like-minded individuals and other youth delegates. We are one of the greatest untapped resources, and it's phenomenal to be surrounded by other motivated and brilliant youth. And then the third phase I just want to touch on is the post part. And I think this part's one of the most important. And that's really with the feedback loop, sharing the learnings and the experience with other youth who participated in the consultations so that they can also learn from the experience. And after, because WHA is so intense, a lot of reflecting on that intense week and period of, what was achieved and how can you share those learnings. So for my experience, I spoke at one of WHO's global conferences on the health workforce that was held in Dublin. I also attended the UN Youth Assembly in New York City to share some of the experiences of youth delegate and the importance of engaging with youth. I wrote a blog post that's available online. I made a video to disseminate the experience. And I was featured in the Prime Minister's newsletter. So really, I just want to emphasize that the Youth Delegate program is phenomenal. It's had a rippling effect on my life. It really solidified that I wanted to pursue a career in global health policy and diplomacy. And it's helped me a lot in my current role at WHO, since I have been able to experience engaging with WHO from the side of a member state. So I'll pause there. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Then I have a question to Iris and Dia. From your roles within your organizations, what can you contribute to meaningful youth participation in the WHO? So Iris, if you would like to have a start, and after that, Dia.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Thank you so much for the question. So first of all, just quickly underlining again what Theodor said about expanding that opportunity for youth to be engaged, right? So we as IFMSA work a lot on youth engagement from our NGO, from being in official relations with the IFMSA. So this whole delegation that's coming to the WHO next week is working a lot on that. But having a youth delegate is a whole new expansion of meaningful youth engagement, both with the WHO, but also definitely with your government and on the country level. So therefore, it's really important, and it's a really important avenue for us to also work on that increased meaningful youth engagement. So how we work on that in the IFMSA, we've talked with the delegation about this a little bit already, but what we try to do is use our avenues that we have for advocacy to advocate for this. So we've talked with the delegation, and we're preparing to contact member states next week to talk about this and to talk about the creation of youth delegate programs. It's a huge area of opportunity, as Theodor also mentioned, and because there are very few youth delegate programs with the WHO, especially when compared to the UN. So it's really an area of opportunity that we, going to the WHA, we actually have that avenue. That avenue is open for us to talk with the member states and make it happen. So that's our responsibility as IFMSA delegation. And then in addition to that, as IFMSA, we try to give tools and resources to youth around the world to create these programs. And the toolkit is a very nice example of that. I'm glad it was mentioned already. And I would also like to extend my gratitude to Theodor, Nicola, and also other youth delegates that are in the call with us today, including Yasin, for contributing to this toolkit, because we set it all up together with their inputs and their insights. And this toolkit is meant to give really resources and really step-by-step help you set up these programs. And besides that, I'm always available for anyone that's watching and thinking, I want to set this up. Please always feel free to reach out. And just a very quick note, if you're watching the stream, then please check the description of the video where you'll actually find the toolkit. And in the toolkit, you can find also my contact info. So that's definitely also a way that I personally try to support any efforts.
Thank you so much. Dia? The question was, how can you contribute to meaningful youth participation in the WHO through your role?
I think in my position now with WHO, it opens up a lot of quite a strategic entry point for meaningful engagement with young people. Iris have been instrumental, and other colleagues I see here as well have been instrumental in supporting the WHO Youth Council since its inception, and it is now under WHO process to formalize the group, the WHO Youth Council, and we will have we have already set up the governance mechanism, how we are going to run the organization, the function of WHO as a secretariat. I think that is one very strategic opportunity that was not there before. When I joined WHO in 2018, we didn't have that platform to ensure there is a meaningful youth engagement between youth organizations as well as students with WHO. That it is a systematically run, systematically designed, and systematically maintained by WHO. I think it's very important, and I would really, I'm really excited to see this co-creation process to be to continue, if not only to set it up, but also I think more importantly in the way where we will run it together. And a second one, this WHO Youth Council should opens up a plethora of opportunities for youth engagement between young people and WHO. And one of the key elements, I think, is the youth delegates, because we have WHA every year. And I've seen in my time with WHO, this is my fourth WHA, as I mentioned before, increasingly there are youth delegates included in the national delegation. But there is that a gap between what we, WHO, can do to facilitate and encourage our member states and the national processes that takes place between national government and young students or young professionals who need a selection process, perhaps at national level. And then as a second layer, when you join the WHA as youth delegates, then there should be an agenda, a menu of activities that young people can do, and there should be an agreed, collectively agreeable targets. What will youth delegates achieve? What is the common agreement between youth delegates from Canada, from Romania, from Indonesia, from other countries? I think the IFMSA Youth Delegate Toolkits is one step forward and one step towards the direction that we in WHO would like to do. And I hope with the support of IFMSA and your really very wide outreach and have a strong convening power, then we can have really a very insightful youth delegate toolkits that is co-created between WHO and youth constituents and other organizations through the WHO Youth Council. This is to ensure that there is a systematic input being done, and then we can put it forward, hopefully in our next WHA, that the Youth Delegate Toolkit can be put forward for national delegation to use as a reference when they do the selection for youth delegates, for national youth delegates. I think that should be the way that we go together.
Thank you so much. And I see you're already inspiring people because the questions are flowing in, and our first question is from Fatima. Fatima, if you could introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you so much for the insightful and inspirational discussion about youth delegation programs. So my question has two parts. The first one is, sometimes we may live in governments where youth delegation programs may be corrupted and manipulated by politics. And this will lead to not well-structured youth delegation. For example, most of them may come from the government and they just have a specific orientation and they are not going to reflect our needs as youth. So how can we ensure the transparency of such programs? The second part of my question is, do you really believe that we have to take further steps in implementing youth delegation programs where we live in governments where you can say transparency is not an option even? So this is my question. Thank you so much.
Anyone who wants to start to have the answer, you can unmute themselves.
Perhaps I can volunteer to take a try at that question. That's a very good question. I'm speaking from both ends, really. This is from WHO side and also trying to understand the complexities of process at national level. I think at national level, there are few steps that need to be taken first and implemented, such as the youth consultation at national level, because then we need to governments will need to know what will be the comparative advantage of including youth into their national delegation. So there needs to be a consultative process being done first. Typically, that process can be led by government, but government cannot do it alone. So there needs to be dialogue, collaboration, partnership between government and civil society and youth organizations and other stakeholders. This is to ensure transparency, inclusivity, diversity. I think those are key elements that we in global level hold very strongly. And Iris can tell you how much or how deep our debate went when we discuss that diversity issue, in tokenistic issue in WHO Youth Council. So I think that should be reflected at national level. And that transparency cannot be achieved if government works alone. So I think it needs to, again, reflect the processes that are now ongoing in WHO or at global level, where we have dialogue with civil society, where we have dialogue also with universities. Those can be reflected at national level. Once that can be done, then we can rest assured that there is no tokenistic and there is transparency. And then there is a strong reason why youth will be the key advantage, becomes the key advantage for governments to include in national delegation. I hope that answers partly. I mean, I'm always advocating that national governments that have not or cannot yet clearly chart out the steps to reflect on global steps and then adjust that at national level. I think that can be done.
Thank you so much, Dia, for your answer, and Fatima for your question. And for the sake of answering all the other questions, I will just continue with the next question, which is from Enu. If you could introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Hi, my name is Enu. I am a final year medical student from the University of Ghana. And my question is to the panelists, especially who represented member states. What were some of the major challenges you personally encountered while you were a youth delegate? So either at the WHA or at other high-level meetings? And perhaps what advice would you give for members who are looking to set up a youth delegate program? Maybe this might be able to give them some tips and tricks for this. Thank you so much.
Yes, so Nicola, if you could start off.
Absolutely. So that's an excellent question. Some of the challenges that I encountered. So I was the second one. The program it was still in the early stages of setting it up. And just to highlight a few, I think I struggled with, what is youth? Am I trying to target high school students? Am I trying to target PhD students? I would love to target all of them, but how do I ensure that I'm representing the voice of all youth? And then going one step further, how do I ensure that there's diverse and inclusive representation in the consultations that I'm holding? And so one example with Canada is it's so important to include often underrepresented voices, such as our Indigenous youth. And I really struggled with how do I reach out to them? How do I really ensure that my voice as the youth delegate is not just my voice, it's the voice of youth? And then I also thought a lot about how do I engage across disciplines. My background was in public health, but how do I ensure that the global health agenda continues to expand across so many disciplines? As you guys know, climate change and access to medicines, you want pharmacists, environmentalists, you want economists, you want social science, political science, everything. How do I really ensure that I'm representing all of those disciplines as well? And then all of this coming to meaningful participation. How do I condense everything that I've learned in these consultations to have a strong voice? And then one other challenge I would say, I think we've come a long way, but there's still a feeling of tokenism in a way, including a youth delegate. There's a check mark, but how do we go one step further and make sure that our engagement is really incorporated and we're listened to, but it's actually if that makes sense. How do we really ensure that we're being heard and we're leading to some kind of action? And I think that while we have gone a long way, sometimes we can go even further. We can mainstream a lot of this and not necessarily be a youth standalone entity, but really be even more incorporated in. So I would say those are some of the challenges and the advice. It's tough. I think learning from previous youth delegates, but also in that specific country, Canada has a handover note of here's tons of stuff that we'd suggest you read through to really get started. But I think also learning from other countries. Other youth delegate programs, there's so much that we can learn from one another. And I really think that the launch of this toolkit is going to be a phenomenal way of sharing experiences across countries and also helping each other improve our programs. And one really last point, just to go back to the last one with transparency, I think that while we want to expand youth delegate programs to other countries, we also want to improve existing programs. And so they're not perfect. There's so much room for improvement. Canada has done a 5-year evaluation of the program of how we can improve. And I'd suggest that others also think about, what areas can we improve within the existing programs, doing a mapping of what youth should be included, including youth as part of selection committees to make sure that it is transparent in the selection. And I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Theodor, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, thank you. Also, just a very quick answer to Fatima as well, to the second part of her question. Yes, you should do it. Even though you cannot ensure transparency from the beginning, I think you should do it and then try to ride political momentum in the future in your country and try to change it with partnerships from other youth organizations. I think it's important to do it and then try to make it right if it's not right from the beginning. But it's a good tool for the youth. And now to what Enu asked. I think financial struggle is another big challenge we have to overcome. Maybe the first years, the government will not pay for your expenses. You should fight for that. In the first years, you should look for sponsorships. We looked for that for the pilot we had 2 years ago. We didn't get sponsorship then. Hopefully we'll get in the future. Another thing is the lack of understanding the concept from our side, from the youth side, and from the official side. And I mean from the youth side, because some young people do take it as an opportunity for themselves, and it's not that. It's not an individual opportunity to go there, learn, take fancy photos, then come back home, brag on Instagram. You should try to destroy that myth by promoting the UN Youth Delegate programs as a tool for the young people, and do not let the young delegate, the youth delegates do stuff by themselves only. Make partnerships with the program and support the program with volunteers, with resources, because there are two people with a mandate. They don't really have the resources to do projects and so on. But in exchange, they will consult you and, you know, put your words and your priorities in their speeches and their events. And yeah, I will stop here for now.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Dea, if you want to add on it.
Point from Theodor, I think utilizing or building a momentum where you, I'm sorry for lack of expression, corner the government to include youth by setting up example. I think one momentum is now in COVID, where there are young people providing health services everywhere, and in fact that you are front runners in providing COVID response, keeping the health system intact. Create that, use that momentum and create the strategic role that you are doing at national level. And by presenting government with facts, I think it's always good, because then they realize that they cannot do without the young people, especially in this very fragile time.
Thank you so much. Then I'll go on to the next question, which I think is also very relevant for Iris. Angelo, if you could unmute yourself and ask your question and introduce yourself. Angelo, yeah. We cannot hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yeah, okay, sorry. My name is Angelo. I'm a four-year medical student from Ecuador. And my question is, as the WHA and most of the meetings will be done in an online setting, what are your recommendations or advices on approaching member states or their organizations, especially when member states are reluctant to the participation on youth and everything will be done by Zoom?
Yeah, Juliette, you already cornered me there nicely. I will give a start at this, but it's a very challenging question, and thank you for asking that as well, Angela. We've talked a bit about it during the past few days of the YouthPreWHA about this approach, because this will be the first WHA that from its onset is organized in the virtual setting. So how to approach this? How are we going to talk to member states and make sure that we have these youth delegate programs? It's a big challenge. So first of all, the thing is we will have a list of names of delegations. So we will know which people are there. And in that way, we can try to find contact information of these people and try to reach out to them. Unfortunately, the Zoom does not have an opportunity for us to chat with them there. So it's not like in the breaks we can reach out like you would in the in-person setting. So we can try to find contact information that way. I think another approach that we could take is go back to our NMOs, our national member organizations in our countries, and see if they collaborate with the ministries in any way, and if we can find a channel in there, because being a delegate to the World Health Assembly is a very impressive position that might help get you into contact through your NMO with the governmental level. So that might be another approach that you take, is reaching out through the ministries and letting them know that you are at the WHA, that you have been selected for this great opportunity, and whether you can discuss with them. Another final approach that I would mention is, of course, social media advocacy, which we're focusing on also. A lot of people at the WHA are very active on Twitter. So keeping an eye out on Twitter and trying to find out who is representing what, and using that delegate list that we have and engaging with them through Twitter is also a very important question, a very important avenue to take, I think. But I would love to hear from the other panelists if they have any other advice for us.
Other panelists? I think it's very hard. But Nicola has insight, so please go on.
I was just going to add a quick one line pretty well. I think that also in some bilateral discussions, if there's a country that, for instance, Canada, I'll use that since it's mine, if there are bilateral discussions where perhaps the Canadian delegation could support your delegation in also advocating for the importance of having a youth delegate as part of their delegation, I think that there's a lot of experiences that can be shared from existing programs to also support you in advocating with your governments as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We have so many questions. I see that Meji from Thailand, if you could maybe introduce yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Hello. My name is Nanisha or Meji from Thailand. I'm a fourth-year medical student. And thank you so much for giving wonderful insights in this session. And my question is, well, coming from a country where seniority culture prevails, youth sometimes do not have a spotlight due to our perceived incapabilities. So what advice can you give to youth in these countries, especially if we want to set up a youth delegate program where youth credibility is necessary?
Perhaps I can offer my 2 cents to Meji. So Meji, I'm an Indonesian, and in fact have always admired how during negotiations in SDGs and also during my time in WHA from the Indonesian side of the government. Before I joined WHO, I have always admired actually how the government of Thailand in the delegation is really having a delegation which consists of younger people towards older and more senior persons in the government. I guess that point being made, I guess each country have their own insights, dynamics, and it's not very easy to change. But as I pointed out earlier, I joined the government as one of the youngest in a senior level position. The only thing I did at that time was being hard-headed. I keep on trying to prove the point, trying to show the perseverance and build this youth-led movement where impacts are delivered, and impacts and data and facts cannot be disregarded. So the government then realized that in the health system, inclusion of younger generation of health professional is a key element. And that's also not only from younger or older generation, but also what area in health policy making or in health system that should be prioritized. I think you can connect who to do it and in which battlefield. If you can present the impact in that at that national level, then I think that should be the only way. But I'm not saying that it will be easy. It's difficult, and don't forget, once you are younger, you have older peers, you will always be the youngest of the pack, and then you will always have to prove that you are worthy of that position, because then you have a certain always have to conquer a certain distrust or I think lack of trust, whether you can actually deliver or not, just because you are young. It goes as you grow older, and I'm speaking from experience. So I think generally we have to always be prepared to prove that we can do something, that we can deliver. And that's the spirit that I'm looking for, and I know that it's there with the young people. And it's not going to be easy. When you are older, there will be younger generation asking you the same question. And it's always a continuous struggle, but you just have to persevere and do it continuously and sustainably.
Thank you so much for your question, Meji, and for the answer. And I saw that Theodor also put an answer for you in the chat. So maybe you can have a look at that as well, Meji. We have so many questions. So I'll combine two. Please say your question very shortly. It's about tokenism. So Sienna and Alicia, could you please, first Alicia, introduce yourself and then ask your question, and then Sienna hop onto it.
Okay. So thank you very much to the panelists for your insights. So, well, my question is, I am Alicia. I am a medical graduate and I am from Peru. Well, my question is related to tokenism because this is something very common in youth delegate programs. So what would be your advices to overcome this problem?
And then Sienna, if you want to add anything to it, very shortly, feel free.
Yes, and I guess it ties in with what Meji had just highlighted as well, like how can we implement structures and mechanisms that combat tokenism? Because sometimes, like, how can we ensure that they recognize the importance of the youth voice? Because sometimes we're just invited to the table, but not allowed to really express our point of views in a way. And even if we are allowed to express it, sometimes it is not taken into consideration when making decisions. So how can we ensure that as we're proposing these ideas, how can we ensure that we are holding them accountable in implementing a proper mechanism that ensures maximum participation?
Thank you so much. I saw that Theodor wanted to say something, and if Nicola wants, you can add too, and then we'll have the last question for Iris. So Theodor?
Very short answer. I also like the topic a lot. I think it's a gradual process. You cannot do something like implement a process to avoid tokenism. There is no such process, like it doesn't exist. But it's a process we should go by ourselves in our settings. Whenever we attend meetings, we participate, when we engage, we should avoid tokenism by bringing added value. And that's what I learned in my experience. It's not really, a success recipe, but it's what I try to do. I tried always to not only propose ideas, but also show them that I understand the finances behind it, that I understand the political momentum in our country, that I understand the administrative part behind my idea, and that it's implementable, not only to bring nice youth ideas, but also to propose ways of implementing it and to be part of the implementation. Whenever I came with an idea in my experience, I didn't say I want this to happen, it's the best idea. I was like, okay, I think this is a good idea. I can do this and that in my idea, but I need your support with this and that. And I also provided them with all the templates for the implementation. So I think showing that we can also, implement, not only talk and bring the youth ideas and, say the youth stuff at the meetings, and also become, mini experts in some areas. If you like infectious diseases, if you like, I don't know, climate change, read a lot, do your research, and bring that added value. Because usually, government officials may not be the most informed all the time about all the subjects. So if you impress them once, twice, 3 times, they will get to learn. They will learn how to trust you and not use you as a token.
Thank you so much. Nicola, would you like to complement?
Yes, and I'll be really quick. It's a difficult question to answer. I'd look for suggestions from all of you. I think it's something that we've all experienced. But I would just say, I mean, engaging with youth is a no-brainer for all of us on this call. That's why we're here. And the opportunity for being a youth delegate is invaluable for us, but there's also huge benefits for the country in having a youth delegate. And Theodor has already mentioned this, but also just to add that, I mean, having a youth with voice at decision-making table means that we're contributing to the policies, we're making sure that it encompasses our needs as youth, and more ownership instilled when we're helping countries to achieve their targets and goals in health in the future. And I think, we need to be persistent. We need to push. There is added value for countries, and we need to help them recognize those. And in terms of a mechanism, I think that this may go back to a piece with monitoring and evaluation and sharing experiences across youth delegate programs. member state delegations, but also other youth organizations that have also experienced this. So I'll stop there, but that's a fabulous question and something I still think about to this day, even 5 years after I was the delegate. So great.
Yes, thank you so much. Then there are some questions in the chat for you as well, I see. But I wanted to ask Felix for the last question. Can you please introduce yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Juliet. My name is Felix. I'm from Germany. I'm a medical graduate. And my question is mainly directed to Iris as the representative of IFMSA. Yeah, I personally think the Youth Delegate Toolkit is a major milestone for youth participation in the WHA. And then my question is, how is IFMSA going to move forward with collaborating with the youth delegates? I've not seen much active participation in the YouthPreWHA so far, and I believe that there are like a lot of synergies and there would be a lot of valuable opportunities to learn from each other, but also with each other. Yeah, maybe you can elaborate on it. I would be very interested to hear your thoughts.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, Felix, for the question. And I'll start off with the congratulations that are in order, because actually Germany now has their very first youth delegate this year, who is with us in the call as well. Teresa is here. So congratulations for that, for your NMO for arranging that as well. So I'll start off by saying the following. So firstly, and Dia already talked about this, is that Dia and I have had a call in which we discussed the way forward. And I think on the global level, there's a lot of opportunity area where we're going to work on these youth delegate programs. So that's one thing that we're very much looking forward to working on together, both as WHO, as IFMSA, and as other youth organizations, to increase those efforts on the global level that are going to flow from this toolkit and that are going to, you know, make it easier and sort of facilitate that process of youth delegate programs. So that's one thing. And then specifically for the YouthPreWHA and the WHA, I'm very happy to let you know that we are joined today actually by other youth that will be present at the WHA. So we have youth delegates with us in the room that are part of country delegations. And we also have youth delegates from IPSF, the Pharmaceutical Student Federation, with us in the room. So that's a very exciting opportunity. And we are in the virtual setting, so there are some more challenges here than if we would be in Geneva, but we are going to make sure that you have some time to network and connect with each other so that you also get to know each other, so that the young people present at the WHA are connected to each other and can advocate together. And I think this is something that in the future we can expand even further. So I think there's opportunity area there even more. And then finally, as IFMSA, with regards to offering these tools, offering supports and resources, we'll keep on doing that. And also offering support, as I said, I can always be reached out by any youth delegate. I've been having many amazing conversations with youth delegates in this past year that I'm active. Well, I'm not active a year yet, but for the past term that I'm active in this position. And we've really been helping each other out because this is a joint process. You know, they can achieve things with their advocacy and we can achieve things with our advocacy, and together we can achieve a lot. And so I think that's really amazing. And I look forward to how it's going to increase even further in the future when we also are going to have, of course, many additional youth delegate programs, hopefully.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Iris. It was very insightful. I think the time for our panel is up. I want to thank each of the panelists for their insights, for sharing their struggle with sometimes not always easy to be youth at WHO or in global health, and also leading us to ways forward to achieving true meaningful participation at the WHO and maybe also outside of it. I felt that I had to leave some questions out. So I think the best is if you have any questions to one of these panelists, they left their details in the chat, and otherwise you can always reach out to Iris because she knows how to find them. So thank you for joining, also to those on the live stream. And that was it.